Welcome back to the Matt Report Podcast, a podcast for the resilient blue-collar digital worker trying to build a business. The resilient blue-collar digital worker trying to build a business. I think that's the new pitch that I'm going with. I've been talking about for years getting away from the WordPress space and just the WordPress nomenclature around this podcast. And now that I've branched out, I feel I can start working the pitch. What do you think? Let me know. Tweet at me. The resilient blue-collar digital worker trying to build a business. Does that resonate with you? I hope it does. Today's guest is, he's a resilient blue-collar digital worker, if he doesn't mind me saying so. His name is Noah Bragg. He's building a software on top of another piece of software called Intercom. His piece of software is called supportman.io. He builds it on top of Intercom, much like, WordPress people build plugins for WordPress. There's this ecosystem of Intercom. Intercom is massive these days. I remember when it just started out as a little chat bubble. And I used to follow Des Traynor a lot. I mean, I still do. Des Traynor, who is the founder, creator, co-founder. I got to get my notes right. But he's an amazing growth and marketing person over at Intercom. And I follow them for years now. And it's amazing to see the opportunity that exists, outside of WordPress. I'm loving having these discussions. And I saw Noah's tweet at some point come across my feed when he said something like, I got my first $50 a month customer. And he's sort of celebrating it and it's sort of on to the next one kind of thing. And I love catching people in those moments so that we can, number one, we can break down, how does that make you feel? It's a small win, right? I think at the time that he tweeted that, his monthly recurring revenue, his MRR was around $200. So I love talking to people in that moment. And come to find out, Noah's done a whole bunch of other things. He co-founded another business before. He has a full-time job and he's doing all of this stuff on the side. I love it. I love the intersection of all these things, and I hope you do too. MattReport.com, MattReport.com/subscribe, join the mailing list. Hey, guess what? We got people who sponsored the show. Let's hear from them. PaidMembershipsPro.com, PaidMembershipsPro.com. You can save $50 if you use my link, PaidMembershipsPro.com/MattReport. PaidMembershipsPro.com/MattReport. Look, if you're trying to build a membership site, you have a customer who's building a membership site, why wouldn't you look at Paid Memberships Pro? Over 200,000 websites use it. They've been around forever. I used to work with them way back in the day. I met Jason, the co-founder of the business, at Pagely's Pressnomics many, many moons ago when traveling was a thing. And it's just a powerful memberships tool for WordPress for free. You don't even need to pay for the add-ons. You don't even need to save. How can you even save $50 on free? You can't. They're not going to pay you to use it, but you can save it on all of the add-ons that they have. If you're looking to connect up to other payment processors, donations, custom post types, things like Constant Contact, and all of these very popular CRMs and sales platforms. Heck, today we're talking about Intercom. Maybe it even connects up to Intercom. Check it out. PaidMembershipsPro.com/MattReport. Save yourself $50. Thanks, Paid Memberships Pro, for supporting the show. Next up is Malcare, Malcare.com, the only WordPress security plugin with instant WordPress malware removal. Our auto clean feature cleans your website without waiting for hours or days. You can scan the site now. Look, they're trusted by people like WP Buffs. We love them. Cloudways, GoWP, WP SiteCare. Oh, Ryan, I could take him or leave him. And then the Astra theme. These guys know what they're doing, and gals at Malcare. They're building great products. They're building Blog Vault, which is another product that they have created. And if you want security around your WordPress site, because my God, who doesn't? Why don't you use Malcare? Very easy to install, very easy to set up. It's guaranteed 100% WordPress malware removal without breaking your website. Get 3 times your money back if we cannot remove your malware. I was talking to somebody the other day, somebody who was running a WordPress website, and they were telling me every time I go to my website, I'm getting that red error message that this site cannot be trusted. And sure enough, that website, if you've ever seen a hacked WordPress website, you scroll to the bottom and there's like this ASCII code, is that what it's called? It's sort of sitting at the bottom and you're like, there's something off with this site. It's doing something. It's got all these spam links in the code, in the source code and all that stuff. I said, no, you just got to go to malcare.com, get them to clean it. In fact, they have an emergency hack cleanup service. If you go to their website, malcare.com, click it in the upper right-hand corner, or maybe you know a customer, send them there. Don't bother doing it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it yourself. Send it to malcare.com. Malcare.com. Thanks for supporting the show.
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me.
So here's how you got here. I saw a tweet on Twitter where you mentioned something, and of course I got the backstory after, but you got your first paying customer, I think, at $50 a month for SupportMan.io. Was that correct? That first tier?
Yeah, so that was the first time that I got a customer to $50 a month. I did have a couple already at $25 a month, but I was really trying to go for getting some customers at a higher tier, and so I was glad I was able to do that. So yeah, that's just tweeted about it, and a lot of people ended up sharing and liking that. So that was cool. I think it's just fun to kind of share. Share what I'm working through. And so I like to share a lot of stuff in public and, just kind of help other entrepreneurs if I can.
What was that other company you started, and how did it lead you to Support Man today?
Yeah. So about 2 years ago now, I started a startup with a buddy, actually my roommate from college. And that startup was called Coffee Pass. And it was an app, really a platform, but to the consumer, it was an app that allowed them to order ahead at their local coffee shops. And so it was kind of like building a platform for local coffee shops that allowed them to kind of have the services that, like Starbucks have with like the Starbucks app, where you can just order on the app, show up, your hot coffee's ready to go, and, you can get on with your morning. So yeah, we started that about 2 years ago, and back then, me and my co-founder, we were really into like the startup scene. We were really into following people like at Y Combinator and a lot of stuff going on in Silicon Valley, and so like we really were like wanting to try to make it big. Like we were trying to get the idea down, build something that could get invested in and find venture capital, and really hit a big home run. And so that wasn't exactly what happened. um, but we learned, and I learned a ton through that process. One, just learned how hard it is to kind of get a business off the ground from nothing, and all the effort and selling and everything that goes into it. We got around 20 shops using our platform. Um, but we weren't making like a ton of money off of it, and that's where we started to see some issues where really like the business model had some issues where really to make it profitable, we would just have to get a ton and a ton of volume onto it. And that's where, kind of following the road that a lot of startups in the Silicon Valley area where, they go out, raise a ton of money to kind of keep them going until eventually they can maybe turn the corner to actually make a profitable business. And so that was kind of what we're looking at, that's what we were going to have to do. And there's a lot of stress with that. There's a lot of risk with that, and it was starting to become something that we weren't interested in. Um, and it really is the go big or go home. Like either we make this happen, we go raise a lot of money, we hire a team, or it just becomes a zero basically. And we just didn't really like those odds, and we were also just starting to see some issues with the business, and so that's why we eventually sunsetted it. And it really pushed me towards more of the bootstraps approach, and kind of the community online as well, of just getting involved in that area and just learning a lot of how like, oh, you can actually make a business that is profitable from day one, and it doesn't have to be stressful. Like I can kind of build it how I want to, and all those kind of things. And so I really like that approach now, especially now that I've kind of been through the other side of it and just kind of had a feel of what that could be like. So yeah, that's kind of what set me on to this, of like starting to build like a micro SaaS, and things like that. So yeah, it's been good.
One of the things I recall as when I started my first company with a partner, it's a super emotional roller coaster ride, like, especially when you're young and you're naive to the fact of like everything that goes into not only like building a product but running a business, and then running a business with a partner,
Mm-hmm.
and then running a business with a partner who has to go out and try to go raise some money and prove that this is a product. Do you remember which emotional turning point it was for you that really triggered both of you to say, this isn't for us? And I remember it for me when we started getting a little bit of seed money, and then we started talking to
Mm-hmm.
lawyers, and it just became like, prove this business, prove this concept to people who had like no idea for technology. And I remember turning to my partner and being like, man, I don't know if this is what we really want to do. We're out here trying to like teach people what the internet is. Now, remember, this is like 20 years ago. Why are we doing this? What was that emotional pivot point for you?
Really, just probably like lots of setbacks. Like it's just time and time again of coming up against a wall, whatever that problem is, and then just having to try to find a way to get over it. And we did that multiple times. Like we would figure out a way to solve that problem. But it just keeps hitting you. You get to the next thing, and then it is meeting with lots of investors and like getting said no to a lot of times, and it's just over and over and over again. um it just yeah there's it's not as fun sometimes when you're
Yeah.
hitting that over and over again. So I think it was more just like eventually just getting tired of that, I guess, and just like kind of having this feeling like, man, are we ever gonna get it there? And then just seeing like the weight of all the risk that was on us as well. So I think that just kind of built up over time, and eventually we got to that kind of turning point where like, oh man, why are we doing this?
I'm always interested to see what carries over from somebody's early journey in building a business to where they're at today. You mentioned that you did get about 20 customers on the platform. Acquiring
Hmm.
customers, building up the first 20. Is there any similarities of what you did back then to get those first 20 to maybe what you did today to get your first 20, or advice for getting your first 10, 20, 50 customers that you've seen over the years?
Yeah, well, I think the thing that I tried to do back then and still try to do is really just understand your customers, like know their ticking points, like what are the couple of things that they really care about. Because then if you can come to them and try to have a conversation, you kind of know what points that you should start talking about that can kind of get them interested. And if your product, especially if your product is helping with one of those things, you can be like, hey, what do you think about this problem? Is this something you really care about? And I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help companies like yours help solve this. You can start to have good conversations that help you to even understand those customers even more. So I think a combination of that, and then just especially in the early days, like I feel like it is a little bit of just kind of gritting your teeth and just talking to lots of people, trying to not necessarily sell them, but I mean, you kind of have to have that kind of communication to eventually get some customers that are interested in what you're doing, and it just takes a lot of effort and time. To find those people that especially when if they're going to be your first or second customer, that has to be kind of a special kind of person that's willing to work with you. um, and so yeah, it just takes a lot of effort and kind of gritting your teeth to get through some of that early stage stuff.
Did you literally call coffee shops or walk into coffee shops in the early days and say, please be on my platform? Like, please use the product?
Oh
Did you just,
yeah,
it was
yeah,
all
we did a
organic?
lot of that.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, our strategy was kind of to start local. If we could build up like locally around us, like where we lived at the time I was in Ohio, if we could get lots of coffee shops in there around there to be using it, then it just kind of built up the value of the platform. So where we could get more people close to that and be like, hey, all these coffee shops that that are also in this area, like they're already on here. And so there was kind of this effect of like the more we got on, the easier it got to sell to them. And so, yeah, in those early days, like we would just drive around to the local coffee shops and just like walk in, get some coffee, and like try to talk to the baristas, try to ask them if we could talk to their manager, see if anyone would talk with us. We also did a lot of like cold emailing in the beginning, and yeah, eventually we got a couple, like we started to have some good relationships with a couple of coffee shop owners that, then they would introduce us to other coffee shops, and it started to be a good thing. But just to get to that point where we had those relationships really took some time. Um, so yeah, it was a lot of work to get there.
You have a full-time job now and you're working on SupportMan. And for folks who are listening, you can get it at supportman.io. And this is, I'm going to let you paint the picture of it. I'm going to show the broad brushstrokes right now. A tool that sits on top of one of the internet's most popular, my God, now it's almost like a whole operating system of support, but it sits on top of Intercom. And one of the things you said to me in our pre-interview was that you look at it as something that there's a ceiling to it, but you're going at it because you chose to mitigate risk. And how I perceived that was you looked at it and said, you know what, there's a customer base that uses Intercom, and I can market to them and I can build something for them, which is not so different than what a lot of people do with WordPress that I talk to. It's like, hey, there's WordPress. It's 50% of the modern web, and I can build plugins or themes or services that attach to it. Do you ever feel, though, that Intercom can either replicate you, or is that sort of something that, you know what, that's not a risk as much as trying to find a whole set of customers? Like, how do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely a risk that you have to be careful of. I think SupportMan, what it does currently, which real quick is sending like a weekly report of the metrics that support teams care about, like the volume of conversations they have, their response times, how happy their customers are responding to those conversations. So that's like one of the main parts, and that definitely is something that Intercom could do more of, is like reports and sending those out automated and things like that. um, but the other part of SupportMan is uh, being on top of Slack, which I don't think that's something that Intercom's really going to care too much about. And Slack is where a lot of teams are already at. So if I can really make it easy to kind of connect those two, and make it really easy for teams to see the metrics and things they care about right where their team is at, and they can talk about it and things like that. I think that at least that portion is something I'm not as worried about Intercom, going for. But yeah, I think anytime you're building on top of a platform, like that is one of the big risks that you really have to weigh. And how I try to go about that is really actually like making friends with people from Intercom and kind of getting an idea of like what their goals are, what they're trying to do, so that I can kind of paint a picture of like what's their roadmap, what things are they possibly going to create in the future, and is that going to collide with what I'm trying to do. Um, and if it is, then probably stay away from that area, just because, yeah, as a one person entrepreneur, it's going to be hard for me to fight against someone on their own platform when I'm building on their platform. So yeah, I'd say definitely stay away from that. But I think there is ways to mitigate that risk and just be kind of careful with it.
Yeah, and of
and at
course,
the same time, you
Des,
mentioned like the risk. Yeah, the risk of basically more so starting from scratch with a customer base, like you mentioned, that it definitely is the value of starting on a platform. Um, I think in my I guess in my experience, it's more risky starting with your own customers, especially in like a new space where you're going to have to inform your customers what you do, what it is, how this solution will help you, and all those things. I think there's a lot more work there that you have to kind of pick up and do if you're really starting in a new market, or a new product all by yourself. Where the advantage of starting on a platform like I am, like basically I'm just solving some problems that are exterior to the main problem that they're already having solved by Intercom. And so they really understand it well. They already understand the problem really well. And there's not really much explaining or extra work I have to do to kind of get that and sell that to them. So that definitely makes some things easier there and less risky.
And look, at the end of the day, you build up a great product, you build up a great set or a large set of customers, and it might make life a little bit easier for, Des Trainer to come knocking on the door and be like, "Hey Noah, we'll we'll acquire you. What's your number?" Gets you
Yeah, yeah.
into that at least that ecosystem, that conversation. So it's not all bad. It's not all stressful. Is there one major lesson you carried over into this new product?
I think another part of like why I chose to build on top of a platform is really just like the sales and marketing part. Like I'm a software developer by trade, and so me going and selling out and getting 20 coffee shops on was very hard and not something that I necessarily enjoyed either. And so really like trying to strategize a way that I can not have to do that. And I think building on platform where most of my customers find me through their marketplace that Intercom already has, it just makes my life a little bit easier and makes me not have to do as much of what I don't really enjoy doing. So that was definitely like one of the main things that like when I was strategizing this, like that was something I wanted to do for sure.
Yeah. But you have a podcast, right? So you have a podcast. And is that part of your marketing play? I think I know a lot of developers who say the same thing as you, is they don't like that sort of external reach out to cold call people, to email them, to show up at a networking event. And you have a podcast. So do you leverage that as this thing that sort of builds the foundation to your networking and your marketing for this product?
So it's yeah, I do have a podcast, but it really is a different audience compared to the kind of people that would be buying Support Man.
Hmm.
And really, the audience that I have for the podcast is really just other entrepreneurs, other indie hackers, other like developers kind of doing their own businesses. And that's the kind of people I love to talk to and love to have conversations with and about. And that's why that's kind of what my podcast is around. But at the same time, I kind of figured and kind of know from talking to people that that group is not necessarily a great group to build a product around, just because indie hackers and developers starting businesses, we try to not spend as much money as possible and try to basically bootstrap it. And so I think that's a hard audience to kind of try to sell to. And actually, that was, when I was thinking of ideas, I was considering like kind of using that group, that audience that my podcast is kind of part of, as okay, what products could I sell to them? And I eventually decided to shy away from it for that reason, just because I think it's hard to sell to solo entrepreneurs. And so Support Man is really more so looking at businesses that have 50 to 100 plus employees, so definitely a lot bigger companies. But the positive is that they have the money to spend on tools like this.
So, can you share where you're at in the monthly MRR figures, and sort of where what your gut feeling is going into the holidays, going into 2021? Obviously, been a crazy, crazy year, but how are you? Like, are you satisfied with where you're at? Do you feel like you're overperforming, underperforming? Paint us that picture.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a really good thing to do and just like keep reevaluating. I try to do that often just so that my expectations are, at a good place and I'm not like getting disappointed. Cause yeah, I started Support Man at the beginning of 2020. And so uh, I didn't launch it until around April or May this year. And so now I'm at $250 MRR. And I'm pretty happy with that just because, obviously there's a long way to go. Um, but it definitely helped like validate what I was doing, and that like, okay, there's something here. Like I can find more companies that need something like this. And so that was definitely some positive feedback to see. At the same time, just kind of seeing how many people are coming through my distribution channel, which is mostly through the Intercom app store. It's not as many as I was kind of estimating in the beginning. And so kind of for that reason, like I think that this market that I'm trying to target is probably smaller than I was expecting in the beginning. And so I think the ceiling is probably kind of, smaller. And I'm fine with that. Like, this is the cool thing about this product is it's really not a lot of there's not a lot of stuff to do to really get it to a good point. Like, I can automate a lot of it, and I found that it really doesn't need much customer support. People kind of get it onboarded, and then they just kind of run with it, and it works for them. And so, like, I'm hoping, like, kind of my goals is to get it to maybe like 1,000 to 2,000 MRR. And maybe that's like the ceiling right there. And if that is the ceiling, like, that's cool, because I can then kind of move on to some other problems, some maybe adjacent problems, or maybe just another SaaS completely. And this can just kind of be a cool little side business that just kind of runs on its own, for the most part. Um, and that, that was kind of my goal starting this, was kind of like the stair step approach of like, okay, what's like a little problem I can solve, and just kind of get my feet wet, learn a lot on the way, and kind of just get a little profitable business going. And I think this could be that. It's just, yeah, it's not going to be like a huge scale or anything like that. But it's, it's a stepping stone to the next SaaS that could maybe be a little bigger problem, and then maybe another stepping stone. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. And I think the other thing that helps with is like just not having too big of ambitions or goals just for this first one, where if it doesn't, hit some MRR level, that I'm going to be disappointed, and something like that. Like, I kind of set my goals small, so that I could hopefully succeed in that, and then kind of move that up a little bit the next time.
So it's either like a blessing or a curse. I don't know. You tell me. But but I've interviewed a lot of developers who obviously have the ability, to develop, right? So before you said, I'm much more of a software developer. I don't like to do the sales, maybe the marketing stuff as much. That's the part that I enjoy, right? The sales, marketing, getting it out there,
Hmm.
networking, talking to people, showing it off, that kind of thing. So when I'm seeing somebody building a business, or if I'm thinking building a business, it's like, okay, all of those dollars that are coming in, from the first $100 a month to the first $2,000 a month, I'm looking at that as I need to reinvest this into developers, and really just spend in that area. You've already kind of alluded to it. Like, you're thinking there might be a ceiling. You're thinking this might be small. How do you balance your ability? I mean, I know you have the day job, but how do you balance that ability to build build anything you want, but stay controlled, not to go start chasing, the next project right away? Do you know where that tipping point will be for you?
So I guess I'm kind of more so thinking of that tipping point not in a monetary sense, but more in like a feature complete sense. And also, um, have I tried a couple more distribution channels to see if I can get the ball kind of rolling there? Um, so and part of that is like hearing the feedback from my current users. Like, am I solving the problem the way they need? And so there's probably still a few more things for me to do and change to get to that point. um, but once I get to that point, I think, I'll start to spend less and less time on support man, and start to uh, be open to other opportunities and other ideas that that come my way. um, but yeah, I definitely don't want to leave, for the grass being greener or something like that too early, and leave support man at a bad spot where it's not going to continue to grow. So yeah,
Yeah.
trying to be balanced with that. But that's kind of, I guess, my mind frame of how I'm thinking about that. And, the hope is that it would then, reach that like 2,000 MRR kind of on itself, by itself once I kind of have the distribution channel set in place, and it just kind of slowly grows over time, hopefully.
When we had our pre-interview, you mentioned you talked to 30 to 40 customers in the beginning to find the exact problem. This is advice that obviously a lot of people should be doing before they build a product
Hmm.
and spend all that time, doing something regardless of what it is. But when I hear this advice and I see other people take this advice, they don't know where to start. Where did you start to find these 30 or 40 or so customers to chat with?
This is also kind of another benefit of building on the platform is my customer, like my target customer, is easier to find because I can basically point at Intercom and find people that are using Intercom, um, people that are managing teams that are using Intercom, and go and find those people and talk to them. Um, and it's really easy with Intercom because every website that use it has this little bubble in the right corner of their
Sure. Yeah.
website, and I can see, oh, they use Intercom. I'll go find their customer support manager or their support head of support person on LinkedIn, and I'll reach out to them. And so that's kind of how I did it and how I started. But again, I think it is a little easier with what I was doing, building on top of Intercom. But yeah, I mean, that's what I would try to do, kind of regardless of the product, is find the people that I think would use what I'm trying to do.
I'll tell you, Noah, there's a lot of WordPress developers listening to this right now saying, I might go build a product for Intercom. It sounds like it's ripe for business. This is
Yeah,
primarily a WordPress show. I normally, I'm talking normally to the WordPress folks. I'm really trying to get outside of that bubble, if you will. Uh, your quick opinion on WordPress. Do you use it? Do you use it for marketing sites? Have you ever used it? Any thoughts around the WordPress ecosystem and maybe even building a product in this space eventually?
I used WordPress, I don't know, probably like 5 years ago now for a couple of websites. Um, and haven't really used it a ton since. So I don't know a ton about, the marketplace and what's going on there. But I do remember, like, having a good experience with it back then. From what I've heard, it definitely, a ton of the internet's built on top of WordPress. So I think that could definitely make sense for other people for sure.
When you turn to building a website for your products, either Support Man or the next product that you might go into, or even like when you built Coffee Pass, what did you use to build out the website?
Yeah, so for Supportman, I actually used a tool called Versoli. It's actually built by another um, indie hacker, solo developer that I got to know decently well, and so I kind of wanted to support his product. And it's kind of like a low code, no code tool for building specifically SaaS landing pages, and so that's why I kind of jumped on that. Um, but I mean, also I would build kind of custom, like using Tailwind CSS or something like that, is probably what I would do now. Um, I think it definitely makes sense for people that maybe haven't built as many, websites in the past to use WordPress, but I enjoy doing that, so I might as well use some of those skills that I already have. So that's probably what I do.
You are literally like a superhero, my friend, just like you have on the supportman.io website. Check it out if you're interested in using, maybe you know somebody who's using Intercom. Maybe this sounds interesting for your own Intercom installation. Check it out, supportman.io. And check out Noah's podcast over at productjourney.fm. But, don't all rush over there at the same time. They say, don't forget to listen to the Matt Report as well. Noah, where can folks find you to say thanks?
Yeah, you can just find me on Twitter. My handle is Noah W. Bragg.
All right, everybody else, it's mattreport.com, mattreport.com/subscribe to join the mailing list. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. Helps us get found. So they say. It's all a big lie anyway, isn't it? Help us get at least some good reviews on iTunes. All right, we'll see you in the next episode.